the power of the Israeli lobby in America is the most detrimental force in America. Our culture has been decimated.
Yes.
Through abortion, pornography, the sexual liberation movement, filthy, raunchy movies, television shows, vile, violent rap music and hip hop and all owned,
music? Oh, it's
all
everywhere.
of it owned by the synagogue of Satan. We're breaking the taboo. You're not allowed to discuss the power of the Israeli lobby in America. That's proof right there. They control America. That's who's controlling free speech in this country. That's who's eliminating the ability to criticize Planned Parenthood. Because who owns Planned Parenthood? Who owns the pornography industry? Let's go down the list. See, they're going to crush anybody who questions their power.
Right.
And they have that power. It's on both sides, as you said. Democrats and Republicans, they all bow down to the Israeli lobby.
Every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money.
Anybody running for Congress is expected to fill out a questionnaire. And they evaluate the depth of your commitment to Israel on the basis of that questionnaire. Then you have an interview with local people. If you get AIPAC support, then more often than not, you're going to win.
Jim Moran is a Democrat who represented a congressional district in Northern Virginia.
You realize it's not just the money, it's the number of concerned activists. They'll send out postcards, they'll make phone calls, they'll organize.
I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput.
Hey, you want to know, here's an easy way to know if you are controlled. Is there somebody or something that you're not allowed to criticize?
That's right.
Simple as that. If you lived in Nazi Germany, you couldn't criticize the Nazi Party. If you lived in the Soviet Union, you couldn't criticize the Communist Party of Russia. If you live in China right now, you can't criticize the Chinese Communist Party. If you live in North Korea, you can't criticize Kim Jong-un. If you live in Cuba, you can't criticize the Cuban Communist Party. If you live in America, who can't you criticize?
Ooh.
Who can't you criticize in America?
The Jewish lobby?
Yes.
On both sides.
Right.
That's right. They did a report, do members of Congress take too many private trips to Israel with AIPAC? And they showed that between 2014 and 2018, over 1,400 congressional trips were made to Israel. 1,400 paid for by AIPAC.
Right. Yes.
Now, so we don't have the right to ask the question, is there influence being made on these members of Congress?
Well, Rick, it's funny you should say that. No less than the New York Times. The New York Times says Ilhan Omar's criticism raises the question, is AIPAC too powerful? The New York Times is asking that. When I saw that headline on the New York Times today, I was like, what, am I in topsy-turvy land? What's going on here?
Israel's having a hard time this year. There's a lot of people starting to ask questions about Israel and their influence and the cockiness and arrogance of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's really, all right. So, if you know how I like to set up the scenario for comparison. Let's say that a large number of of Persian Americans were in the House and Senate and the State Department, the Pentagon, and they had dual citizenship in Iran. Would it be a legitimate question to ask if they have loyalty to the Ayatollah Khomeini?
Yes.
Of course.
Sure.
Or
How about
Russian.
Russia?
Yeah, Russia.
Okay, exactly.
If they had citizenship in Russia and the United States, would that be questioned?
Look at the craziness the Democrats have gone through in the past 2 years about Russia and the United States in the Trump administration. I mean, it got so to the point that you're afraid to have Russian salad dressing, okay? You might be accused of being a spy.
Yes.
Okay, so what if a lot of House members had passports to Russia? Would that not be a legitimate question, especially if they're serving on the House Armed Forces Services Committee? I can say this right. The Armed Forces Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee. Wouldn't that be a legitimate question?
Big red flag.
How can you
right?
be on the Intelligence Committee and also have a passport to a foreign country?
Where's your allegiance to?
Well, AIPAC says if you ask that,
You're anti-Semitic.
you're anti-Semitic if you are asking it in relations to Jewish members of the House and Senate.
Who are dual citizens with
Yes.
Israel.
So let's play that clip and
Okay.
let's see what she said that started this fire.
I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country. I want to ask, why is it okay for me to talk about the influence of the NRA, of fossil fuel industries or big pharma, and not talk about a powerful lobbying group that is influencing policy?
Okay, she asked a very valid question about members of the U.S. Congress and members of the State Department and in the Pentagon, in the White House, who have dual citizenship. They have passports to the United States of America and Israel.
Well, not just passports, actual citizenship.
Well, you can't have the only way you can get a passport is to be a citizen. All right? So if they have a passport, they are a citizen. So she's asking a very legitimate question that I asked 20 years ago when George W. Bush went into the White House in 2001. Some of his key people in the Pentagon, Paul Wolfowitz and others, they were the neocons, okay? They had dual citizenship, all right? One of the neocons is back in Washington now, appointed by President Trump, is Elliot Abrams. And he's the new envoy to Venezuela. To the best of my knowledge, Elliot Abrams has dual citizenship. Okay, so I was asking that in 2001. Why can these people be in the Pentagon and make war plans when they have a passport to Israel?
How can they be in the House? How can they be in the Senate? How can they be in the cabinet? How can you be loyal to two nations?
Treasury Department. Look, do you understand what you're saying? They're dual citizens and they have high-profile positions in our government.
Yes.
What? This sounds crazy to me. And a lot of people don't understand that this is finally starting to come out into the public, and people are starting to really see how involved a foreign country is involved in our politics. But she would not say AIPAC, would she? She said a powerful lobby.
She's been told she can't say AIPAC. Now think about that. A member of the U.S. House of Representatives has been ordered not to say AIPAC or Israel lobby.
Yes.
She can't say it.
Wow.
Now AIPAC said charges of dual loyalty are anti-Semitic.
Now, what did the Jews do? When you ask what have the Germans done to the Jews, you must always ask what have done the Jews to the Germans. Since 1850, when the Jews got all the political rights in Germany, in the German Reich, they have done three things which are really dramatic. Number one, they were a small minority of 2% of the population. At the time when Hitler came to power, 500,000 within 60 million German people. 500,000 among 60 million. They were a small minority. This small minority managed to control about 50% of the media, to give about 70% of all judges, to have a tremendous influence in movie and in theater and in literature. They were overrepresented. This is one thing. They were absolutely overrepresented, as today in England, in France, and in the United States. Second, Jews were at the origin of a lot of catastrophic financial bank crashes in Germany between 1870 and 1920. In that time, they made a lot of crashes which have, this is all documented. It's not Nazi propaganda or anti-Semitic or Arab propaganda. It's a lot of books have been published, even by Jewish Germans, about this problem. They have millions of German fathers have lost their incomes, their fortune, their savings, because of these Jewish gangsters, bank gangsters and speculations people. Then the third point, which was psychologically the most dangerous of all, they have introduced into German art and culture and theater and movie decadence, immorality. The first homosexual theaters, plays, were made in Berlin in the 1920s. The first adultery theater plays were made in the 1880s and 1890s, 100 years ago, by Jewish authors. Adultery, then sexual perversions of all sorts, sadism, masochism, a lot of homosexuality, all these things, and then decadent art, you know, an art which is absolutely ridiculous, so-called modern art. It was all pushed by Jewish intellectuals, and this created among the German people a big revolt. And they wrote books ridiculing Christianity, ridiculing Jesus. I mean, it was something like Salman Rushdie with the Muslims. And there were furious reactions in Germany, and the Nazis, of course, benefited from it.